It's all in the,
Oh, yeah, this
some of
one.
them are in the
Oh, that's the Kimberly
worship and the membership class.
membership class.
I'm trying to talk about the structure.
Oh, that's mine. That's what I think.
Well, good morning.
Good
It
morning.
was great to see everyone. Everyone's all spread out here. We're all good. Hope that you had a good week. Thanks again, Pastor Eric, for covering for me last week. And you heard about the Sunday school materials, so we'll see if that comes in before the end of the lesson here. Any prayer requests or anything you'd like to share as we get going?
Biden's getting ready to start taking money back to Palestinians again, and they use it to teach your kids that loser doesn't escape when they can be killed. And they give anybody that's killed $4,000. And I hate to see him start giving money back to Palestinians again. Need to pay Israel again.
Cover George, you know, the boss's husband.
Oh, yes.
He gave you 5 minutes for MRI and CAT scan this Wednesday. Let's pray for him, all right?
Okay.
Who is that?
Gail and Cheryl.
Yes.
Joe's husband, George.
Okay.
You want the MRI and CAT scan this Wednesday.
Oh.
I'm sorry, Tuesday. Yeah, tomorrow. Okay. 85 years old, you know, so definitely afraid of dying, so. It's not redundancy, definitely afraid of dying.
Yeah.
He's scared to death.
Yeah.
Can't afford to count, I can't afford for salvation, or you can't offer salvation, so make sure we rely on that, so I'm sorry.
You know, we need to keep Desi in mind too, because somehow I think her arm swelled too much or something this week, and she had to go back and they had to loosen the band or whatever she's got on. She's been in a lot of pain.
I will certainly remember Desi.
Remember the Stockton family? Yeah, she passed. Alice passed, and that's a blessing. The Lord wasn't going to heal her, then it'd be good to go quick, you know. And they just got things they have to take care of, you know, like any family has to take care of things. So, yeah. And I have an aunt that her grandson apparently he was 15 years old, committed suicide
Oh, no.
in Idaho. Yeah, so,
17 years old.
yeah.
Sad.
That, let me tell you something, that happens a lot during this COVID thing. It's more rapid now. Yeah. Then Debbie's brother, his name is Kenny. He's in the process of getting some tests done and getting organized. He's going to be going they're going to transport him from San Luis to LA for a surgery. He has neofibromatosis, and he's going to be in the hospital for 6 to 8 months. And then he'll have another 6 to 8 months of rehab after that. But it's all up and down his spine. They're going to be putting in pins, screws, and removing tumors off of his spinal cord.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, spinal cord is supposed to be really smooth and all that. But his is just like, it's a massive thing.
Who is this 16-year-old kid? What's his family name?
It's, I'm not sure of her last name right now.
Okay,
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Doris is, her name is Doris. Sad. But anyway, but Kenny's gonna be having that surgery, but he's gotta get, everything's gotta line up. Best possible surgeons,
Yeah.
yeah, that they have, so.
That's really bad.
And that's a 50-50 chance. He could possibly be paralyzed for the rest of his life, or he'll be upright to be able, because he can't, he's totally bent over and can't walk, can't look up, no strength. In a chair. Debbie's brother. Want me to turn this off?
I'm fine, it's up to you.
Turn it off?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how to play something, record.
Just remind me to turn it back on, guys.
Well, let's go ahead and let's pray. Lord, thank you for today, and thank you for an opportunity that we can meet together. Thank you that we have that privilege and right to do that. And, we just lift up so many that we're familiar with. We think of Desi and Randy, and pray that you continue to help Desi heal as quickly as possible. Pray that you would be with the Stockton family and the strains that they're dealing with. And pray that you be with David's brother Kenny as he's having the surgery. And as was mentioned, just pray that everything will line up well for him. He'll have the best doctors possible, and that the surgery will be successful for him to regain ability to move around and walk again. Pray that you be with the family of that young man who committed suicide. Can't imagine the hurt and things. Just pray that you be with them only the way you can. So give them some peace and things there. And pray that you be with George as he's going to have some tests run. And just pray that those would be good and no problems. Just pray that you give him peace as far as where he's at with you, Lord. And as always, just pray that you be with peace, be with our world and provide the peace that we need and the desire. And pray that you would be with us as we look at your word this morning. And pray that your spirit would guide our conversation, our thinking, and pray that our hearts would be open to your spirit's leading. And we just thank you and give you all the praise and pray these things in your name. Amen.
Yeah.
Well, last week you looked at the transfiguration of Jesus, and in preparation I had some questions. Why does Jesus need to be transfigured? And all these things is interesting. But in the long run, the event gave the disciples another piece of who Jesus the Messiah is. And remember their perceptions of what the Messiah was going to be, and the Messiah that Jesus is were often very, very different. So this gave them another piece. They were given a direct command from God. Do you remember what the command was? Listen to him! Exclamation point. And I think I've heard God say that to me now and then. When things get busy and Harry and I, everything starts getting all cluttered upstairs. Hey, all you gotta do, listen to him. Keep things simple here. So as you looked at that story, the disciples' comments and their actions reflected people who didn't know what to do in an unexpected situation. You remember what Peter wanted to do when Moses and Elijah showed up?
Build 3 booths.
He wanted to build 3 booths. What are we thinking? I have no idea. But people respond to unexpected situations a little differently. How do you respond to unexpected situations overall? What do you think? Handle them well? Do you get overloaded? What?
Depends on what it is.
Yes.
Okay.
If it's kids, they just go.
So tell me something that would be unexpected, that would kind of throw you for a loop, so to speak.
Extra family showing up unexpectedly.
All right.
And what do? You cook.
Sometimes there's sicknesses in families that show up,
Yeah.
throw you for a loop. Not expecting anything to be happening, you're perfectly fine, and then all of a sudden, go to the doctor, you.
Yeah. 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 You know, I thought about this, how do I react? And I've worked with a lot of different people, in my career and stuff, and, I would see some that would just they're almost immobilized. They really don't know what to do, and so they just sit and let things process, right? I've seen people that, start getting caught up in the drama. What if, And for me, I'm a problem solver, so I immediately go into, okay, what can we do to help solve the problem? What do I have control of, right? And most of the time you have very little control, but things you do have control, you want to start, doing that kind of thing. And so I kind of related to Peter, totally unexpected. What do? Well, you start building. Start doing so because he was familiar with that, even though it's a totally...
We think we need to do something. all the
Right,
time.
yeah,
We don't need to, most things, you don't have to do anything right at that moment.
yeah,
Like you said, you can stop the process and wait till another day comes. Then
Sometimes
you're
it's
able
for the best.
to listen.
Yeah.
To listen, go back,
yeah.
to listen.
Or when they move in and you can't motivate them to move out. We're doing it like 2 at a time, getting people out, off our property. We still have problems, because it's got so much junk, that needs to be hauled off. So,
Yeah.
anyway, it's a work in progress.
One bite of the elephant at a day, right? Yeah.
You have people come in the middle of the night with their dump truck. Oh, dead cars.
Well, today's lesson, Jesus and John and James and Peter, they come down from the mountain and they find a crowd that is surrounding the other disciples and things. And the other disciples were unable to drive out an evil spirit from a boy, even though they had driven out evil spirits before. And there's all this commotion, okay? And Jesus finds himself in this, well, for Jesus may not be unexpected, but the human side, it was an unexpected situation. So we are in Mark chapter 9, and if someone wouldn't mind reading verses 14 and 15.
When they came to the other disciples, they saw a large crowd around them and the teachers of the law arguing with them. As soon as all people saw Jesus, they were overwhelmed with wonder and ran to greet him.
So tell me about the situation that Jesus sees and finds himself in here.
A bit of chaos.
All right, a lot of chaos, I'm sure. You're right. What else do you find? There's really 3 groups here. Can you tell me the 3 groups?
The teachers,
The teachers,
disciples
the
themselves,
disciples,
and then the other people.
and spectators.
Yeah.
And what's going on between the groups?
That kid has got a demon that can't get out of.
All right. Yeah, and we know that there's that kid. We're not told about that yet in 14 and 15. But you're right, there is a Father and a Son that has that Spirit in him. What's going on between the disciples and the leaders? Arguing. What do you think they're arguing about?
I would say there's probably a argument about Jesus or, yeah. Because they always argue about that, I would think.
Yeah? So what did the disciples try to do?
Cast
They
out
try to
the
cast
demon.
out the demon.
They tried to cast out the demon, you know? And they were not successful.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
gotta-
How do you think the religious leaders responded to their lack of success?
Well, they were probably glad because they didn't want to see them be successful.
Okay. What would have been the problem with the disciples being successful?
Messed up their very theology,
Okay, yeah.
messed up their whole lifestyle, their whole everything. They were probably since they were totally just nobody, you know, they're good, how in the name of Jesus, you know.
Uh-huh, right.
Praise nobody, so there's an incident, but
So have you ever been put in a situation where people are looking over your shoulder, just waiting for you to mess up, and when you do, they let you know about it right away?
Right away.
Yeah, we've all been there. So the disciples found themselves in that situation, right?
you did.
And the religious leaders, we know that they feel threatened by Jesus. We know that. Not just their, you know, it is who they are. It's their position, their livelihood, I mean, you know, the whole thing. And it's being threatened by Jesus. And so when the disciples are not successful, I'm sure that the religious leaders were just letting the disciples and the crowd know why they were not successful. Good morning, Debbie. Hi, Myra. Good morning.
Good morning.
Now put yourself in the disciples' sandals or shoes. I don't know about you, I've been in that situation. I've seen people in situations like that. How do people tend to react when they're put in those kind of situations?
Tendency to fight back.
Yeah, yeah, you get defensive, right? And so I imagine the disciples here were very uncomfortable. You know, I have experienced, you know, you feel that temperature rise in you, right? And you feel there's some threat, and you don't want to look like some Dumbo head, and you know, all this kind of stuff. And so I imagine that the disciples and the religious leaders were shooting it back and forth pretty good. That's my guess. We're not told specifically, but human nature, that's my guess, is how everything was going down right there. Okay? Now, one thing was mentioned by Ken. When the disciples were trying to heal someone, did they do it, you know, like, hey, you know, Mark says, out? You know, how were they doing it? How did they have that power?
They only had it in the name of the Lord.
All right. So if, you know, in the name of Jesus, I command you, or I heal you, or whatever, right? Okay.
Right.
And now, didn't happen.
Well, their attitude had everything to do with it.
Okay, so possibly
They
their
were
attitude.
angry, you know.
Oh, they got angry.
I
Yeah.
know, but in anger, you have to,
you have to refine yourself to where you're not angry anymore, and you have to put yourself in that clean, clear spirit with the Lord in order for the Lord to bring down the power for you to do what you're asking to be done in His power.
Okay.
And they didn't have it. They were mad. They were angry. And that's not the Lord's way.
Well, yes, they did get angry, you know?
Well, you got those teachers there, you know, nanny, he came to.
Yeah, yeah, well, yeah, I'm sure there it is, egging them on, you know, absolutely.
Do you think that they went, because they had healed a lot of other people, they had prayed for a lot of other people. Do you think that they were kind of maybe puffed up a little bit, you know, like thinking, yeah, hey, you know, doing by healing other people, you know, others around them, you know, that's flattering, I guess, is what you would
Sure.
say to other people sometimes. And maybe they were puffed up, and maybe it was just, you know, maybe they weren't prayed up. You know, I just something. Yeah, there's a lot of things that can take place. You
So
know.
I'm sure in this argument with the Pharisees, they were taking it personal,
Oh yeah.
Yes.
and they were trying to defend Jesus, I'm sure at the same time. You know, there was all this element going on. Now, Ken mentioned earlier about the boy and the father, the boy with the spirit, okay? We are not told anything about them in the first two verses, okay? What's this whole thing about?
Yeah.
It's about the boy
Mhm.
with the spirit. The whole story is about the boy with the spirit in it, right?
Where are we in the
But we're not told about them at all in this argument. You can only imagine this large group of people. There's people in the, you know, inside the circle, you know, here and there, John back and forth, and out to the side is the father and the convulsing boy. And no one's paying attention to them at all. So now you're Jesus, Peter, James, and John, and you're coming down, and that's what you see. Okay? That's what you hear.
I'm listening.
Oh, yeah, because you had the study school material.
Oh,
with it.
yes, but I can't carry it in
Oh,
there.
all right. All
I
right.
hope they got it right.
Well, we'll go on. All righty.
Oh, yes.
So if you would, someone wouldn't mind picking up again and reading from 16 through 19.
What is all this arguing about Jesus? One of the men in the crowd spoke up and said, "Teacher, I brought my son so you could heal him. He is possessed by an evil spirit that won't let him talk. And whenever this spirit seizes him, it throws him violently to the ground. Then he foams at the mouth and grinds his teeth and becomes rigid. So I asked your disciples to cast out the evil spirit, but they couldn't do it." Go on, how far?
Through 19.
Jesus said to them, "You faithless people, how long must I be with you? How long must I put up with you? Bring the boy to me."
All right. So in all this, we see the man speaks to Jesus, and Jesus says, "What's going on here? What's all the clamor about and everything?" What do you see in Jesus with him figuring out what's going on? What strategies does what does he do?
Well, I think he's going to get upset with these guys. He knows he's towards the end of his time. He knows his time is just about over. And he's been with these people for 3 years, and in 3 years they haven't learned a thing, it seems like. And that's what he said. In 3 years, haven't you learned anything? That's kind of what I hear him saying.
Yeah.
That's a lot of arguing, because there's something at hand that needs to be taken care of.
Uh-huh.
You know, and by them arguing, they're taking their mind, their spirit, and everything away from what needs to be taken care of. You know, and
So as Christians, we see the disciples, they're in the middle of this argument, right? They don't want to look like chumps, all right? They don't, and everything. But they've lost sight of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is not their main focus any longer, it's winning the argument. Look what Jesus does immediately. Focus on the problem. Okay, and how does he focus on the problem? Starts asking some questions. You got the right guy. You know what's going on. And the man spoke up and shares all this information with Jesus. Tell me some things about the boy that we learned. Only child.
The thing that gets me is that he's an innocent, and the devil loves to go after the innocent.
Okay.
And I haven't had a book since the middle of January. I lost it and I haven't had it since, so I really don't know the lesson. But just from where I'm getting here, it's just like the devil has put a demon spirit into this child that just drives. His father is so worried and so concerned and so upset. What can I do? You're the only one I've heard that can do this type of healing. Please take this demon out of my child. And that's what I hear the father say.
Yeah, a lot of desperation there, definitely. Yeah.
Because the disciples have already tried to heal him.
Uh-huh.
They haven't been able to.
And they were not successful.
And they're trying to figure out all this stuff too. So they're kind of in like, I don't know what's wrong with us. Where's Jesus at? So this is a good teachable moment, I think,
Yeah.
for everyone, disciples, Pharisees.
I like what Jesus.
Dad.
I like what Jesus does here, because I think as Christians at times we lose focus. We get into beef with someone or an argument with someone, and trying to convince them that, I've got the right answer and da-da-da-da-da, and, next thing you know, you've lost sight of the problem to begin with.
Well, I'll take care of that.
Yeah.
I'll take care of that. Taking care of nothing, boy. I've been there, done that.
So Jesus refocuses everyone here. Now in 19, you unbelieving generation, how long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Now this story is mentioned in Matthew and in Luke. Very similar story through each of the Gospels there. And Jesus' remarks here are almost word for word the same. So all three Gospel writers felt it was important to include that. Why do you think, well, let me ask you, who is Jesus talking to here?
All of them.
All of them?
I think just the disciples.
You think it was just focused on the disciples?
So he says
He
generation.
says generation, so
Oh,
it doesn't say
So
everyone.
if I would say generation, I would say that, everyone that was in that area at that time. But who was talking to him right before that though?
The man, the boy's father.
Yeah. And then the disciples before that, right? Yeah. Yeah, if it says generation, I didn't read up on that part of it, so.
So the man tells us the information about his son, and Jesus' response, he said, I asked your disciples to drive out the spirits, but they could not. And then Jesus responds, you unbelieving generation, and so on. Disciples, the whole group.
Well, nowadays it would be the world, but back then Jesus' preachings and his ways of life were not known to everybody. Were only known to the few that he'd been able to reach in those 3 years that he'd been on earth. But he gave the rest of it to the disciples to carry it on, to make us knowledgeable.
Just all.
Yeah.
I'm not positive here. I'm just asking questions, you know. As I read it, you unbelieving generation,
Yeah.
everybody,
It's a sweet.
how long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Focused on the disciples.
Right.
I could see Jesus turning his head, and then with that last little bit, looking at the disciples. I could see that, you know? But I'm not certain on that. That's just my take on it. You hear frustration?
Lots of it.
Lots of frustration.
Lots of it.
And you'll notice in the last couple of lessons, we've had different incidences occur that are giving the disciples a real clear, this is who I am and this is what I'm intending to, this is what's going to happen and why. And they're still up to lunch.
Yeah.
They're getting pieces, right? Some things are, you know, they're starting to understand, but the big picture, they don't have it yet, right? And they won't until Pentecost. That's when the bulb really came on. It's like, but for now, yeah.
I was born and raised in this church, but the light didn't turn on. But I was like in my 60s, or late 50s, early 60s before the light actually turned on for me, because it was just a thing that we did. We went to church every Sunday morning. We went to church every Sunday night. We went to worship every Wednesday night. It's a thing we did. It was not, you know. But then I had to have all three of my kids and have them come on and out of the house and have time just for me to be able to stop and realize what this was all about. Now, I know it sounds crazy, but
Oh, no, I think we continue to learn different pieces.
yeah.
Because I don't have all the answers. I'm open. You can be Sunday school teacher if you've got all the answers in a second, you know, I'll relinquish.
Even
Sure.
Sunday school teachers don't get it, because I didn't.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're
I
all
got
on
it, but I
the, we're all
didn't.
on the path, we're all on the journey and learning and experiencing. Well, let's see. Jesus has his little moment there.
Mhm.
Let's pick up at verse 20, if someone wouldn't mind reading verses 20 through 24.
So they brought him. When the spirit saw Jesus, it immediately threw the boy into a convulsion. He fell to the ground and rolled around, foaming at the mouth. Jesus asked the boy's father, "How long has he been like this?" "From childhood," he answered. "It has often thrown him into fire or water to kill him. But if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us." "If you can," said Jesus, "everything is possible for one who believes." Immediately the boy's father exclaimed, "I do believe. Help me overcome my unbelief."
Since childhood, then how old is this person?
I'm guessing when he said childhood, you know, the boy's now, I'm guessing, a teenager, so he would be, you know,
Yeah.
the father's responsible for him, but he would be more of an adult in that society. What do we see Jesus do here? We see the father bring the boy to Jesus. What do we see?
Immediately, the spirit recognized Jesus.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden it was like, boom,
Uh-huh.
you know, everything started
He
happening.
knew he was in trouble.
Yeah.
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 So he immediately threw the boy into convulsion.
He says, "I put up with you up there on that mountain."
How
That's not
stupid
what
he
you
was
about.
to do that, because he knew Jesus is in control.
So look at verse 21. Jesus asked the boy's father, "How long has he been like this?" Now, is that important information?
Well, he wants to know how long Satan's been inside this child. Yes.
Yeah? Does Jesus know the answer to that question?
Yes. I believe so.
You know, Jesus knows all, right?
Yes.
So, why do you think he asked that question?
For the father and the people around to recognize how long the Satan has been inside this child.
Okay?
It's almost like that, you know, it's like that, I don't know. It's hard for me to explain what I'm thinking.
He asked a question, almost as if he's a doctor. Because he
Kinda
wants the,
like that.
yeah, he's wanting the information.
Yeah.
He's getting it, so he knows exactly what to do.
Okay, yeah. It is very much like a doctor, you know, like, knowing, you know, the symptoms and, you know, that kind of thing, yeah. Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, since he's already run your blood work, he already knows what's going on. If you want you to tell him. So it is like a doctor.
Yeah.
And when you ask a question, when Jesus asks, how long has he been like this? And then the man gives him his answer, the man is affirming to himself too, how long. Like he's making him aware, and the other people aware.
Aware of the people's unbelief.
Yeah.
How long have you let this child be this way because of your unbelief? Does that make sense? I don't know.
Because when you hear things, you know, if they're just watching and they're not hearing, but when they hear the man say, they may know they may know the boy that he's been like that. But when you say it, it's one of those things that gets into you, you know.
Goes into a different part of your brain.
Yes.
You know, your vision has one part of your brain, but the voice takes over in another part of your brain. And when you put those two pieces together, all of a sudden it's like, oh my, you know.
So Jesus is really, I mean, the way he does things is so
Well, does that
smart because he proves it.
Yeah.
The unbelief is that because of lack of faith he's talking about?
Yes, I think so. I believe so.
Example to the fact that Jesus total control the situation.
Yeah.
Going freaking out, the kids on the ground rolling, his phone is off, just running to, you know, what he's doing. He says, how much is going on? You know, that's not a casual question.
No.
He knows that he's absolutely just calm about those three, when freaking out and screaming. We got them to scream out, hollering like that, or get afraid or something like that. The fact that Jesus says, how much is going on? Interesting question. You know, it was like, how's the weather today? You know, it's pretty casual. To me, that's just the confidence Jesus had God the Father to work in his life. So, anyway.
I've dealt with people that have lived through experiences or are living in an experience that is totally foreign for me. That I just, how in the world? That's not normal. You know? That's not normal. This man has been dealing with this child for years and years and years and years. This is his norm. Now, everyone else around wouldn't trade places with the father in a second, you know? But for the father, he doesn't know any different. This is the father's norm. And so when Jesus asks him those questions, I think it's helping the father to understand this isn't just normal. You know, this is much different. In a tough situation that you find yourself in, just so that when he is healed, the father will have a better realization of the change, you know?
Maybe you're all at work with mom. Things more about that.
Yeah.
And she at home, and he's initiated the grandson, and she said, I get a little like, I'm out of here. And
Yeah.
a lot of factors could be there too.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
But you have to believe that he can. You know, here he said, if you can do something, the Father said, and the Lord said, if you can, everything's possible if you
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah, in verse 22, the Father says, but if you can do anything, take pity on us. If you can. Yeah, you can almost hear the incredulous, the Jesus speaking with some incredulous tone there. Everything is possible for one who believes.
Do you think that was lack of faith, or was it just lack of
I think so,
understanding
because
at that
The
time?
next line tells it.
Yeah.
The next line tells it all.
Well, does the Father have the faith?
Oh, yes.
Says, who believe, but tell me.
He has to believe, he
He
don't
wouldn't
have.
have came to him, I don't think. Yeah.
He heard about this
I
man
don't
that could do things like this, and he knew that man was in down, and he says, if anyone can do anything for my child, I'm sure this person can. And with that, he had the beginning of belief. And
Yeah.
it was when he got to Jesus and he got to where he was asking for this help, he was still kind of in doubt, and that's why Jesus said, why are you doubting me, is what he's saying. And then immediately the boy's father explains, well, I do have faith in you. You know,
I do believe, help me overcome my
Yeah.
unbelief.
yeah.
How many of you ever prayed for somebody to be healed? I think we've all been there. If my success rate in my prayer to healing, if I was a baseball player, I would not be in the Hall of Fame. My percentage would not be very good. You know?
And why is that?
So, the question comes, is it my unbelief, my lack of faith?
I don't think it's the lack of faith in God that you have. I think it's the lack of faith you have in yourself to be able to pray the kind of prayer that needs to be prayed for someone to be healed.
Okay?
I don't think I agree with that. But we don't know God's plans. And maybe his plan is to have that person healed later on, or not at all.
I had a pastor one time, we went out to dinner. Well, he wasn't the pastor of the church, but he was the pastor that was there. Gets called himself pastor. Prayed for our daughter Jennifer for something, I can't even remember what it was. But anyway, prayed for something, and he told her after the prayer, how do you feel, da, 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 and she's a child, she's not a very old teenager, I think. And all of it was saying, what's your lack of faith? No. That's why you weren't healed. And I kind of think that's how you're kind of, it's just God's timing. It's when God sees fit that, things take place. Because we don't know.
I agree to a certain extent with your comment.
Yeah.
But it is God's control, but
Yeah.
how much faith do you have in yourself when you're making the prayer, is what my thoughts
Well,
were.
I have prayed for healing, and the person wasn't healed.
Wasn't supposed to be.
And was my lack of faith or understanding or whatever, I'm praying for this person to be healed, but in reality, if they die, they're better off. They're with the Lord. And there's no more pain, right? But should I have been praying, Lord, if your will is to take them quickly? Maybe that should have been my prayer.
That's what
You know?
I always pray that
Yeah.
in the emergency room where we get all the traumas and the drownings and people who are very ill. And I can remember it was pastor and his wife, their son. And the mom was kind of hanging off my back, begging us not to stop. But in my mind, it's like, Lord, please don't bring him back like this. please don't bring him back like this, let him go. That was, I even asked at one point, do you want me to pray with you while I'm bagging her son? And, we were praying at the head of the bed while I'm,
Yeah.
while I'm in the human ventilator. And that lasted for about 45 minutes before we could get him back up to room temperature. But yeah, I think that is an appropriate prayer, because I've seen it when we just want them to live, bring them back, bring them back.
We live in our society, where it's all about being in my personal happiness, my personal goals, et cetera, okay? And I also, I think the father's probably worn out here too. Oftentimes there's a bar, and the bar's got, always has to grab his kid out and bring us back to security. He gets probably worn out physically himself, so he's trying not work as a kid for himself too as well. It's his lifestyle, it's his normal, all right? He's on the fire, he runs in the water, got to grab him, put him outside. Probably lost sleep, probably got physically exhausted, probably got worn out physically, his strength, stuff like that. So then I was in my rope here, so I found out Jesus wasn't then brought in there, so he wanted these kids dead, they're all dead now, so yeah, this whole mystery of healing somehow.
When my son was injured in '07, the first couple of days I was just in shock. I couldn't fathom everything that was going on. But when it came to it, I just asked God if it was with His will to let him live. God will.
I think I figured out something. I was angry at God all these years because I asked him to save my baby sister, and he didn't, and I got mad. I still went to church, I still acted, but in my heart, I was so mad at God for taking my baby sister away from me at 14. And I've been angry ever since.
And it's easy to fall into that. That's our humanness.
Yeah.
And we want that, loved one and relationship and things, and yet big picture, many times is better. Well, heaven's going to be a whole lot better than we're sitting around today. I don't think they're going to have these kind of tables, and the chairs will be softer. And, one more thing to say, let's finish up.
I do. So if it's God's will to heal someone, is He not going to heal them because we don't have enough faith when we pray for healing?
No.
So, that's the backwards way of thinking about it. If it's His will, He wants us to ask Him for these, these things, and He wants us to believe that He can do them. But if it's His will or not His will, our faith or lack of it is not going to change His will, I don't believe. And His will is His will.
I think Laura hit it on the head, with praying for His will.
Praying for His will.
And not our, what's
And being
comfortable for us.
thankful for whatever that may be.
Yeah, and I don't think
That's hard to do, but.
And I don't think it's a sin to say, your will, but Lord, in my heart, I really, really,
Oh, it's not
want
no
this
way.
to happen.
That's not right.
But,
Why does God get blamed for everything when, Satan got his way when she got mad at the Lord for taking the baby? And Satan's of death, God ain't.
Yeah. Well, see, when I finally began to understand what happened is when I found out what was wrong with her. And when they were in that car accident, the temple bone went into, the jawbone went into her temple on both sides. And she would have been a living vegetable. And when I come to realize that, it was lots of years later, because somebody finally took the time to explain to me what happened. And that was when I said, I'm sorry. And things were different before.
Well, let me finish here real quick. Okay, we got some more, but we're not going to be able to have a conversation very much about it. But starting in 25, when Jesus saw that a crowd was running to the scene, He rebuked the impure spirit. "You deaf and mute spirit," He said, "I command you, come out of him and never enter him again." The spirit shrieked, convulsed him violently, and came out. The boy looked so much like a corpse that many said, "He's dead." But Jesus took him by the hand, lifted him to his feet, and he stood up. After Jesus had gone indoors, his disciples asked him privately, "Why couldn't we drive them out?" He replied, "This kind can come out only by prayer." Not by arguing. Not by arguing. All right. Staying focused. I get from this lesson a lot. Staying focused on the problem. And by staying focused, it helps us know what we need to pray for. Some of the, I don't remember which one it was that mentions prayer and fasting. Do you remember which gospel? Yeah, I didn't see prayer and fasting.
It's actually the King James versus prayer and fasting.
Okay, it's through the translation, okay. All right, then I was looking for that. But praying, you know, what the direction that we should be, and not what we want, and things. Well, thank you guys. Any other insight before we close?
This is a teaching tool. This is a means to not heal itself. That's where you can use it. That's very about healing, not about you, but it's about teaching the disciples by his powers and why they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
God has our life for us. So we can say, I can't do it. If I can't do it, to be honest with you, that's why we didn't do it.
Yeah. They were wise in showing and asking questions. Yeah. All right, let me go ahead and close with prayer. Lord, thank you for today. Thank you again for this time. And thank you for giving each and every one of us a little bit more pieces of information and understanding so that we can understand you better, Lord, and respond hopefully more appropriately. Help us to always keep our focus on you, Lord, and